Okay, we're going to just give a demonstration, sort of, not really an animation, but a little like an animation, of how you do slip forms. This is one side of our dirty kitchen. There'll be a mirror image to it. They both get counters. Never enough counter space in the kitchen for a Filipino. They pile them up until you can't put a water glass down. So we're going to have plenty of counter space. They're 26 feet long, 3.5 feet wide, and there's 2 of them. So we'll see if I can get away with having a place to put my glass. So the first thing you do is you're going to put it together over here someplace. So I just drug all the forms up in the general area and set them on the ground. And now we're going to put the forms up. Oh, I should have imported the rebar that goes in here. You'd stand the rebar up and put a couple of diagonal rebars on it just to keep it from falling over, and then put the forms around it. Because you want to tie those the bottoms of the rebars to rebars that are sticking out of the slab, so they don't get washed to one side or the other when you're putting the concrete in it. And I'm sorry about that. But there is a video here about the rebars that we're using with slip forms and why the spacing is what it is. And it's probably a half an hour long like most of them. Okay, transform, move. We're going to move. Here's a piece. Move it from there. Here. There. And we'll get this chunk. And this is an end plate because there's a door. There's a door out both ends of for air circulation, so we can stick that down there. Have to be on there sometime anyway. And we just made a U-shaped form here. Let's see if we can see which one it is. It's down here at the bottom. It's yeah, my pointer's on that. It'll come around here. I probably could do better if I caught that corner. So that's what we just put together, one side of a U. And then we're going to take forms and we're going to put them a space 7 inches from that. Let's get this guy here. Okay, if you had 4 guys working, take around 2 hours to, once you carry these and throw them around near where you're going to work, 2 hours, 4 guys put all the forms together. And it doesn't take much longer than that to move them. Okay. Well, let's just step over here a little bit. Okay, so we put these forms together just a second ago. And we have to imagine that there's rebar in here, which of course there's not. So you pour this concrete right even with the top of the form, from the ground to the top of the form, and you finish that just a little bit, just so there's no big rock sticking up. It saves point loading. That's why I do that, and rather than just leave it. Some people like it rough, they think it locks together better, but I look at it as rocks putting into the other thing with a higher stress load. Okay, so once we poured that, we need to take the forms off to slip them. That's and we end up with a piece of concrete. Now all these little things here, those are plastic pipe that was between the two pieces of forms. You can see the thickness of the wall here. We try to keep it the same across the whole job site. They don't need to be that thick, but they were originally done to be the same thickness as a rendered 5-inch block wall, which is about 7 inches. So we just stuck with that number. It takes more concrete, but whatever. So we got 1/3 the height. So we just bring the forms back. I didn't make a raise them up thing. Okay, now what I want to notice here, this is the bottom of the form, right there. See those bolt holes? We're going to look at the concrete now. There's the concrete. Those are the bolt holes that are in the concrete. These were the top holes of the first pour. And now the bottom holes from the next set of forms goes through those, what were the top holes, right? And now it's slipped. You can figure 3 hours to take those forms off and clean them. And where you might have put them up in 2 hours when they're on the ground, add another hour, because you're working off of ladders or scaffolds or something like that. The bottom bolts, you just put your threaded rods through the bottom and hold it up there. But the rest of them, you put the rods through, then you hang the plastic pipe on it while it's open, and you put your electrical conduit and all that kind of stuff. I'll tell you what, one other thing we want to do. We're gonna put some window bucks in this wall. These are some rectangles. You on the main house, we made them all round, just because they measure them and make them fit. Is what they do with windows. They didn't care if they were parallelograms or isosceles triangles. They just kept saying they'll measure them and make them fit. Make it any shape you want, doesn't make any difference. So we made them round. I believe they're going to back off on what they said, but I know the people really well. They're allowed to stick to it. Now, the reason we put these this section the height we did is so that we could set these bucks right on top of the concrete. That means we have concrete underneath of the window buck. We don't have to fight to get it under there. We just made the bottom of the first slip to be 4 feet. Now we could have stopped and filled the forms this high and bolted our next form onto that hole and had lower windows. But I got a kitchen counter up here that's 36 inches. So I don't want I want a backsplash on the kitchen counters. And that leaves me about 2 inches for trim. So it works out for what we're trying to do with this kitchen to have the bucks there. You can also clamp these bucks between the forms, but then you have to get a rod and wiggle it back and forth, or you put some holes in your formwork up here that you can put a rod down in it and wiggle around in circles. We did that on the helical stairs because they were completely formed and we had to fill up underneath of the phenolic board that was the steps. Took 8 hours to pour those stairs. And that's with trying to get the motor to start the first time on the mixer. You know, it'd been sitting for long. Nobody ever drains the gas. Anyway, so we've come up here and we bolted the forms on one layer higher. We put in some window bucks, and you'll notice that the bucks are figured out. You do the same thing with the round windows, so that these through bolts right here can go past the end forms. All right, so that you can put a through bolt from a form on the inside form to the outside form right on through this this window here. this piece you see coming across is the outside form. There's nothing on the buck across there. It's just a drilled hole. And this hole can be a 2-inch hole saw hole if you want. Doesn't make any difference what size it is. On the round windows, we just used 2 of the top ones up here and hung the form from them. And then when we tightened all the bolts and clamped it, it was definitely not going anyplace. But in this one, we're just going to set it on top of the previous wall to give us a flat side. We wanted a window jamb so we could have a definite stop board for the window, and wanted it in concrete. So the plywood, the phenolic board, is lined between the two 2x3s. Okay. You got one set of 2x3s right in with the edge, and did I tell you wrong? I told you wrong. The plywood is the outside edge, and the outer 2x3s are lined up with the edges of the phenolic board. And then you come in either half of a 2x3 or whole 2x3 is what was drawn up here, to give you a ledge to set your window into. So when you go to take it apart, you can access these screws, which are the phenolic board, and then the screws. And this other side, there's nothing behind this 2x3, so the screws are exposed on the other side of the wall also. And you cut this little piece that goes across the top here. Cut that thing about a 1/4 inch out of square top to bottom. And that way, if it doesn't fall down, you can tap it with a hammer and it'll fall down. And once you get that one out, the other two just fold in. So it comes right back apart without damaging it, because most of these bucks you're going to use them many times. So we've set the bucks in there. We put the horns back together. The rebars were stood up for the whole way to the wall. And reason we do that is because we use boards with notches in them to space the rebars. They're 9 3/4 inches left to right, and then they're on a schedule on the horizontal bars. More bars where there's more load. You don't tear a piece of paper from the center, you tear it from the edge, that kind of deal. And this thing is on a pretty heavy floor, and it's got an integral foundation beam. I suppose this dirty kitchen and another thing would just be sliding back and forth on top of the ground, and we'd be out there with a water hose and metal rods and stuff underneath of it to get it back to level, because it ended up tilted one way or another. But it'd be in one piece. That's probably a good thing. So we put the bucks in, and we're going to pour concrete, fill that thing up, and then we're going to take our buck away, our forms away, and our window bucks will be sitting there. Where's my concrete? Tell me I didn't put concrete in that. Yeah, I just grabbed hold of the concrete and the forms when I drug it to the side. Okay. Wouldn't be much of an animation if we had nothing to bolt it to. And you see these holes here, the spacing is about the same because the bottom went to there, so you have to figure out where these holes in the forms need to be to get a constant spacing. And that might be important if you're running electrical and things. But when we take the outside forms off, the bucks are still trapped in the wall. So you have to undo your screws on the 2x3s. Basically, it's two 2x3s, a piece of 3/4 plywood, and that's like 6 3/4. And then that silver-backed insulation foam they put up underneath the roof tin. You put a piece or two of that, whatever thickness you need to make it the right size for your thickness of your bucks. Or you can make a 2x3 and a 2x4 and just trim one of them thinner, which you can do it with a handsaw here. Okay, transform. Now we're going to take the window bucks away. I hadn't. This probably won't work because I hadn't set it up to do it. We'll look at that later, but apparently it's made the hole. Okay, what it's done is the buck was thinner than the wall. So it subtracted the buck, but it doesn't stick through the wall. If you're going to do that with CAD, you make it thicker, a couple 20 thousandths of an inch, and then it'll make a clean hole. So we should be looking at a nice window jamb, but we're not. Okay, now we're going to take and put a third lift up here. And this one, bottom hole of the top form, right here, and the top hole of the concrete line up. You bolt it right back together. You'll notice that this is self-jigging. If you halfway plumb the first one, after that you can't hardly get it wrong. And pour it through a concrete, and then, oh, wait a minute here. Oh. Somebody didn't fill it full of concrete. Hit the wrong button. Now in this dirty kitchen, we have 4 feet, 3.5, and 3.5. So 2 3.5 is 7 plus 4. That's 11-foot ceiling. We want plenty of room for heat to get away. I'm just curious of whether we actually have a hole in the back side of that wall. No, that form is this trapped right in the middle of it. Lovely. In our case, we stopped here at where we had a door opening. Never did figure this command out. But there's a door here and here. And I'm thinking what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this at 2/3 height here. And then I'm going to put an actual beam across at the door height to tie this U-shaped thing with the one on the other side. We'll probably put a actual door buck in like the window bucks as we go. I saw something else I can't remember what it is now. Probably have turned in for in now. I turned the right side into the left side is what I did. Anyway, you want to put your electrical boxes I don't know how other people do it, but I just cut the 7-inch pipe shorter and run it through the electrical box. And any place I want a box, I just stick the pipe goes up to the either stop the pipe at the back of the electrical box or use a 1/2-inch pipe, because the electrical boxes have a 3/4 inch hole, and you can just have it trapped around that, and then you have a piece of conduit running up, and you run it right down into the box, and that is to try to keep it vertical. They hardly ever end up vertical. They're always crooked a little bit one way or another. And Texas Filipino uses tie wire, and he clamps it down on them really good, and his look better than mine did. I've had trouble with that, getting them right. And we did it where we had 3 chances to straighten it out, and we managed to screw it up 3 out of 3. So if you're a stickler for plumb electrical boxes, anchor the crap out of them. I suppose you could have a wooden block that's the shape of the box screwed to your form and set it over that, and with a real tight fit. There's ways to do it. We haven't managed to do it. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Suppose you did not want an 11-foot high wall. I can go back to where it was. We're going to show it on the bottom, but you could do it on the top. This is walls tilted, is why those things are not round. Okay, when I bolted this second form into the top hole of this concrete, I could only slip that up this far, because see, these bolt holes are the same spacing left to right. So I could have took a foot off of the window height, and the overall wall would have been a 10-foot wall with exactly the same forms. See, as long as I stop the concrete less than 5 inches from here, so that the other one can can fit into it. Actually, that's not even true either, because this concrete could go up into the full height up here, and you would still bolt it on down there. It'd just be stiffer. So you could if your window buckle would have to be lowered, of course, to where you wanted it, but you could just have a bigger overlap, and a 4-foot form you can make a smaller wall than 4 feet with a 4-foot form. Anyway, this is the concept of slip forms. They have advantages in underground tanks, like septic tanks, water cistern, tilapia pond. We're using them on that kind of stuff. And a dirty kitchen, because once we make the forms, may as well use them for everything. And of course the rebar sticks out of the top of this up here. Now we did do one thing different. We went like 25 centimeters center to center on the vertical bars. We have one that stops 2 inches from the top of the concrete, and one that stops about 18 inches from the top. So they're 50 centimeters apart just for that last foot. You really don't need any more bars than that. Don't even need that many. It just that they made it an even number rather than a bar and a half or some weird number. And so you have all the bars goes up within up past the next to the last bolt hole. They go up past this, and somewhere right in here, every other bar ends, and the ones between go all the way up. That was just so we can cut a 20-foot bar. Here is 19'6". It's 6 meters plus maybe 2 centimeters. We wanted to cut it so that the one side was the height we needed for the wall, for an 11-foot wall, and the other side was what was left with no waste. We're kind of big on no waste, and we had them so close together that it really didn't make any difference. So you can make a different height than your forms. You could go as many lifts as you want. They do grain elevators in the Midwest of the U.S., 90 feet, 120 feet. Their forms are about 2 feet tall, and they have hydraulic cylinders on them that fit into the cross bolt holes from a previous lift. So they do one on a concrete foundation, and then they get it up to where they can bolt it on. They put the bolts in it, and They pour the next one within 3 hours of the first one with a concrete pump. And they just keep slipping. The concrete never actually cures between stages. Sometimes they may go up 10 or 12 lifts in a day, and it gets dark and they'll just stop for overnight and let it cure some. Because you're putting an awful lot of weight on that with solid concrete. But there have been some done with air concrete and things like that. They've just gone from the bottom to the top, 90 feet in a shot. And there's no seams in that bin anywhere. I mean, even the smallest bugs haven't got a place to get in there. Anyway, this is the concept of slip forms. We're going to call this a video and do another one. Oh. Well, I knew what it was. Has to do. Oh, I know what the next one is. A couple people wonder what the this artwork, security grills and vent windows and handrails, how it come up with those. Our crew does the work, but I did a computer drawing of what they do, and then we're just going to go through the steps on how you take an actual photograph from images.search.yahoo.com or google.images.com, and you turn that picture into basically line art, and then you measure the frame you need, you put your line art in there wherever you want it, printed full scale, well, a large format printer. You don't need to print the frame, you only print the actual line art, and then you fill in either vertical or horizontal bars. We're doing vertical bars on the seagull air intakes, and we did horizontal bars on the fish on the first floor for the window grills. And I kind of think we did vertical bars on the safety handrails around the 2 round roofs. And on the atrium handrail, there's a catwalk 10 feet up on the atrium. You don't want anybody to step off of that. They're not supposed to be on that. That's not living space, but somebody could find their way up there. The stairs are inviting, you know. I don't want to lock something up. I got to climb over a lock or something because, you know, we're close to 80 years old. We don't need to make it hard to get around the house. Okay, so we're going to shut this one off, and we're going to do something on the seagull air intakes. And goodbye. Oh, if you learned anything here, you can give us a thumbs up. If you've hey, this flat didn't like it, don't understand it, whatever, you can give us a thumbs down and then mention. It would be nice if you'd mention why you didn't like it. But it's kind of hard to use that information because I get like 2 views on a video. Some of them get none. Kind of hard to steer what you're doing with one, no viewers. That really curtails things. We're not monetized. We're a content channel. We're not doing copyright infringement on other people's movies and things. Everything we do is original. So we'll never get to the number of subscribers and play hours to make a monetary channel. This is just something to inform people. What we learned on building a big concrete house. You know, it's probably 4,000 square feet on each level. Okay, we're going to turn this off and say a little prayer today, and goodbye.